That's right. What does Sandeep just had a scheduling conflict?
Yes, sir. He's a busy man. So tomorrow, Suncat will be taking the What is Polygon segment as well. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, nice. Oh, I see. So he could hear us, it appears, but
Min looks a little different from the last time we spoke.
not what I expected.
Probably someone from our India team. So all good.
Yeah, I got some cool coverage from Yahoo India. That's awesome.
We're trying to do some innovative stuff, so it's a good time. Thank you, Jason, for tuning in. All right, let's give folks another few minutes, and then we can get started. Hey Tejas, how are you where are you calling in from?
Calling in from Kentucky.
Nice. Which city in Kentucky?
Louisville.
Gotcha. Just visiting, or that's where you're based?
I moved here about 2 years ago, but I grew up in Eastern Kentucky, but I moved back from Denver a few years ago. But not a bad state to be in. What about you guys?
Yeah. I'm based in Puerto Rico. Ryan, you're in New York, right?
No, I'm in I'm in LA. So it sounds like we're pretty spread out here.
Recording in progress.
Will, where are you calling in from?
Hey, I'm calling in from Portland. Currently in Portland. Usually I'm based out of the Bay Area.
Awesome.
Nice. How's Oregon treating you?
It's nice. It's really pretty out here. Yeah, lots of good nature.
Not a bad time of year to be in the Pacific Northwest.
No, it's nice.
Let's give, I think, 0x Maki a couple more minutes, and then we can kick it off.
So in the questions here, I see a lot of, so we're talking about institutions. Curious, like, are we specifically focused on like banks, investing institutions, or do things like market making firms, other kind of institutions from the traditional financial system, do those also enter into this at all?
We can talk about whatever you think is relevant, Will. I think it's pretty free flowing. I think another 30 seconds or so, we could probably kick it off. I think it's just a hangout, between us, Bitwise. You guys just put together a nice index. So we'd love to have you guys talk about that a little bit. But yeah, anything the crowd wants to listen to, talk about, we can cover as well. Just want to give Xerox Maki another few minutes just in case he does want to make the beginning, but
yeah,
otherwise.
From like our side of, is my mic's on here? Hopefully you can hear me. From like our side of things, you know, we focus a Bitwise on the institutional investors, so like investment professionals, hedge funds, you know, financial advisors. But I'm super interested, and I think it's just a really interesting topic to go over, like just market making, right? Some of the infrastructural back end of like finance as a whole. So any of that stuff I think would be really meaty and good stuff to get into.
Perfect. Cool.
All right, I guess should we get started? So my name is Dean Thomas. I am the head of institutional capital at Polygon. I know I look a little bit different from Mr. Sandeep. Unfortunately, had a scheduling conflict, so I'm here in his stead. We wanted to just have a nice little kickoff session. Bitwise has been, you know, instrumental in bringing institutional capital into blockchain and DeFi in particular. And I think there's just so much interest and things that are going to happen in the next 12 to 24 months. If you look at the stats, I think the latest, even if you use like a 2 trillion market cap from CoinGecko, the actual market capitalization of crypto is tiny. I'd say less than 1% of global assets, whether it's equities, credit, real estate, real assets, commodities. And as people in the broader institutional world realize that there's significant yield, investment opportunities, and just cool technology that's really changing the landscape of how we operate, the 1% is slowly going to start creeping up in terms of the total composition of assets on a global scale. So Bitwise was kind enough to partner with us to put together this panel. They recently came up with a DeFi index. And so I'd love to introduce Ryan, who will be presenting about what is Bitwise. And we have these wonderful panelists who represent the protocols that are in that index, who are happy to answer questions and kind of talk about what the world will look like as we move from a very kind of decentralized DGen run world into one where, you know, regulators are going to step in sooner or later, and how do we get in front of that, and what are the questions that we should be asking. So Ryan, feel free to go from here.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Dean, for that great intro. You know, super excited to be here. I'll give a little bit of background, I guess, on myself, and then let each of the panelists can give an intro on themselves, and then we'll dive on into a quick presentation on what is Bitwise. I'll try to cover that in like 5 to 10 minutes, but then we can dive into the panel, which is what everyone's really here for. So my name's Ryan Rasmussen. I have a background in kind of traditional finance, working in the independent financial advisor, broker dealer space in corporate finance. And, you know, moved over into crypto and DeFi because I believe it's the way of the future. And at Bitwise, we're just trying to help investors and finance professionals gain exposure to crypto assets. And yeah, I'll get more into that. But, you know, really happy to be here, to be partnering with Polygon and, you know, talking with some of the leaders in DeFi. So, you know, kick it over to someone else to give their intro, and then we'll dive in.
Sure, I'm happy to introduce myself quickly. I'm Will Warren. I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of ZeroX Labs. In 2016, my co-founder and I started working on a protocol for peer-to-peer exchange of Ethereum-based assets called ZeroX Protocol. And today we offer developer tools that allow any developer to integrate decentralized exchange functionality into their applications on Ethereum, on Polygon, and ZeroX API, which is our developer product, aggregates all the different sources of decentralized exchange liquidity and spit out the best price. So it's very easy for developers to offer really good prices to their users. And I'll leave it there.
Nice, I can jump in and follow. My name is Tejas Shastry. I joined Ren about late May. And just to give you a little bit of background about what Ren is, we're an open protocol providing access to inter-blockchain liquidity for all of decentralized applications. And our mandate kind of centers around this fluid movement of assets through our protocol. You know, we help facilitate this movement to the highest yield market, something that I think will be pivotal for institutional adoption. And our end goal is, you know, to make this transfer of assets so easy that the end user is kind of unaware of what chain they're on. We're very much hoping to build the multi-chain verse, as we call it.
Chef Maki?
Hello, guys. Yeah, here we go. Oh, can you hear me? Sorry about this. Yeah, contributor to Sushi Swap, community-led DEX that is also kind of encompassing multiple products like Cashi, which is lending and borrowing for kind of all sort of digital assets powered by Chainlink. We also have like a MISO launchpad to kind of launch these new digital assets, whether they are NFT, whether they are ERC20 tokens, and so on. We're kind of pioneering. Sorry if this is cutting, the connection is always spotty. So yeah, we're pioneering like all these kind of assets with MISO the Launchpad. So this is kind of our contribution to the DeFi ecosystem. We're like one of the very few DEX that is multi-chain. So there you go.
Awesome. Well, thanks for giving the intro, everybody. Like I said, I'm super excited to be here. Talk about Bitwise for a little bit. Each of the protocols that were just talked about are part of different Bitwise indexes. So happy to jump on into it, and then really excited to hear more about what everyone's doing. So let me just share my screen here and dive on in. One moment. Oh. Hey, Dean, do you want to go ahead and change the settings so that I can go ahead and share? Or if not, I can jump on in without a presentation. We can do it.
Hey, can a member of our tech team make Ryan an admin, please?
Yeah, that's right. I'll go ahead and start, and if we get it going, that's okay. But if not, either way. So great. Looks like that's going. Perfect. All right. Sorry about technical difficulties, everybody. Hopefully you can see this now. So like I said, my name's Ryan Rasmussen. I'm on the research team here at Bitwise. I'm super excited to be co-hosting this event. I'm really, really stoked about DeFi and about bringing all these great minds together. So just to kind of talk about what is Bitwise, we're one of the largest and fastest growing crypto asset management firms in the world. We created the first crypto index fund and have several other funds built on that model, like the Bitwise DeFi index, which I mentioned the members here are all part of. And we have other index funds also built on that model. We have single asset exposure to crypto assets as well. You can think of Bitwise like the S&P 500 or FTSE 100 for crypto. We focus exclusively on crypto, and we work to ensure our products are fitting into the existing workflow for investment professionals, and we try to provide a safe, secure, and easy way for them to gain access to crypto on behalf of their clients. If you think about the way like crypto emerged, through the adoption of self-directed retail users, much like many of us probably got into it. We at Bitwise believe the next major waves of crypto adoption are going to come from institutions and consumer-facing products that are built on top of DeFi. We at Bitwise sit in the middle of those institutional investors and the crypto markets. It's a really interesting intersection to be in. We primarily serve RIAs, broker-dealers, financial advisors, and investment professionals. High net worth individuals, and really just any financial professional who wants to gain access to crypto assets or any of our funds that hold these crypto assets on behalf of their customers. Beyond our indexes, we provide research targeted towards these investment professionals. Our head of research, David Lewant, and our chief investment officer, Matt Hogan, authored the CFA's Guide to Crypto, which became the most downloaded publication in their history. So we have a lot of strong partnerships with your traditional industry outlets where investment professionals go to, either continue their education for their certifications or just to learn more about the developments in the financial world. We also host webinars. Normally we have over 1,000 financial professionals in attendance on these webinars. And we try to tackle the questions about crypto on like how to think about crypto assets from the viewpoint of a financial advisor, how they can understand them, they can explain them to their clients, We try to talk about them in a way that investment professionals can understand. So we talk about fees and revenues and cash flows. We try to introduce, total value locked and other metrics and KPIs on how DeFi protocols are measured, like price of sales and really other traditional valuation metrics that you can apply to these revenue producing crypto applications. A lot of our time is spent with investment professionals just talking about the broader macro picture. We talk about regulatory markets, global adoption, and as I mentioned, just how to think about crypto in an institutional portfolio. I mean, really what we're trying to do is bridge the world of decentralized finance and traditional finance. Over the past few years, since we were founded in 2017, we've grown into a team of 35 people. We have a wide range of kind of backgrounds and experience, and I'll kind of show that in our leadership team slide here. Like I mentioned, we got a wide background of experience. We try to marry, the tech side and the traditional asset management side with our leadership team. Bitwise was founded by Hunter Horsley and Hong Kim. They're our CEO and CTO. They met in college and have backgrounds at Google, Facebook, and Instagram. Like, these guys are extremely passionate about crypto. We're not a traditional finance company trying to move crypto. Both these guys were kind of built this company during, the bear markets and during, when crypto wasn't really a widely understood and talked about asset class. And like I said, we have more than 35 employees. We have grown to over $1 billion in AUM. Our president, Teddy, and our CIO, Matt Hogan, and head of business development, Nick McLaughlin, have a combined over 40 years of ETF experience. They've worked with some of the largest financial firms in the world. These guys are on the road more weeks of the year than they're not. They are having lunches, going to offices, having dinners, going to conferences, and meeting with financial advisors, with hedge fund managers, with really anybody in the investment professional space that wants to have a conversation around crypto or learn more. They've given and are super passionate about bridging the gap between crypto and the traditional investment world. I mean, that's what we spend a lot of our time doing at Bitwise. And then we have Catherine Dowling, who's our general counsel and chief compliance officer. She was previously assistant U.S. attorney of the economics crime unit and has held executive positions at multiple capital management firms. So she brings a great amount of value from the regulatory and legal and kind of compliance standpoints. And this just combination of a diverse background is part of our formula of success in the crypto asset management space, where blockchain and crypto meet traditional finance. This is just a map that shows our distributed network of sales and advisor support teams across the country. Like I said, we have a very kind of unique combination of crypto knowledge and traditional finance experience. A lot of these team members have previously worked in organizations like Goldman Sachs and UBS. So they definitely understand the financial advisor and investment professional landscape. They also kind of specialize on integrating into the workflow of investment professionals, which is really important in the push for adoption, as it enables financial professionals to gain exposure to crypto assets in a format that they're used to, in a format their clients are used to and used to seeing. And we try to make it so that they can actually view these crypto asset allocations within the broader portfolio of their clients' total investments, which it hasn't necessarily been able to do in the past when clients have just held assets on their own, at centralized exchanges like Coinbase. Oops, sorry about that. And then just the last thing here, I did mention that our research team authored the CFA's Guide to Crypto. We've also written investment cases for assets like Uniswap and Aave. We do a lot of webcasts, and we're really just trying to produce educational, informative content about crypto and how it's bringing much needed improvements to a financial world that's very archaic that we operate in today. So that's kind of all I got on the what is Bitwise sales pitch. I'm gonna go ahead and hand the conversation over to Dean and the rest of the panel. But really excited to hear from some of the leading DeFi team members here who are all part of the Bitwise DeFi Index.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. So I think the macro backdrop, which I think is always useful to kind of take a look at, is so Hunter is a good friend of mine. I think what they're trying to do at Bitwise is amazing, primarily because I think the wave of institutional capital is so massive, and those folks, they can't ignore the numbers, right? If you look at kind of the yield on stablecoins and even the safest of protocols, it's significantly higher than, let's say, the 0.5%, 0.4% that the highest high yield savings accounts are giving you. And I think what Hunter and Ryan and their team is trying to do is basically work with regulators, like educate folks, bring them in the space. They're not trying to be hostile and fight them, because I think nobody really wins in that situation. And so I think part of what the purpose of this type of panel and panels like these going forward is, how do we work with the massive asset managers, massive sovereign wealth funds, to bring them into kind of our community, which started off as a small community of maybe coders who are figuring out these cool ways to connect capital in a decentralized way. So I think what I'm very fascinated to hear about, and I think what we all recognize, is that we're still so early in this space. Like Andreessen just raised a $2 billion fund, and everybody was in our space was like, this is massive, this is big. But compared to, let's say, my former employee getting over $1 trillion. So there's a lot of capital that they want to learn about us. They don't know about us. What are you, I'm curious, I want to hear, what are you guys as the protocol heads seeing in terms of institutional interest? How are you guys planning on getting ahead of that wave, and what are you doing as preemptive steps to get ahead of it? So I guess I'll ask Will first.
Thanks, Dean. Yeah, happy to dig into it. Well, I guess from our side, we focus much more on institutional market makers than perhaps like banks or other traditional financial institutions. And I mean, market makers are very much attracted to opportunity wherever it may be in the markets. And the crypto markets are an incredible space. There's tons of volatility, and the size of the markets have reached the point where the opportunity is tangible for these institutions, rather than being like a rounding error compared to some of the other markets that they play in. There's real opportunity in the DeFi and DEX markets today, and so they've taken notice. They're looking at all the opportunities here and looking for ways to get involved. And so we've had like a number of conversations with some of these traditional market making institutions that are looking to get into the space. We've onboarded some of these institutions that have been watching from the sidelines for a while. We've onboarded them into the space, and they're working with us to provide liquidity into these markets directly today already. And it seems like we are still in like the early stages of onboarding the kind of institutions around these traditional markets, but we're picking up speed, and the opportunity size is only growing.
Got it. Tejas, what are you saying over
Nice.
over there?
Yeah, well, we are being approached by a number of VC firms that are interested in not only gaining exposure to interoperability, but also interested in using our protocol to invest across chains. And I think for me, the driving force for adoption by institutions will be high yield. And that's what Ren does. We create these pathways to find high yield with whatever asset. And that definitely is one of the driving factors behind our conversations with institutions. And like Will said, we're right now in the early stages, but the future is definitely bright.
Got it. Chef Maki, you have, I think, one of the most interesting platforms across multiple chains, and I personally use Sushi, so thank you first of all for spearheading that effort. But I'm curious, how are you thinking about whether including the institutional guys? Are you guys going to work on a product? Is it going to be how are you thinking through a lot of the questions that come along with it in terms of regulation, et cetera?
It's a good question. I mean, on our side, this is very different, I guess, than onboarding a specific institution. We're trying to stay as much as possible open. The truth is, for example, with the regulations and everything, we had this kind of exchange requiring, I guess, requirements on the side of KYC, whitelisting of pools, and so on. We're not against the idea of it. we think that navigating this landscape is very difficult without kind of compromising the ethos and kind of the values that makes DeFi so powerful. We're talking about composability around all the protocols, etc. So there's like kind of pros and cons involved with dealing with institution, but at the same time, all of this is to provide security for the end users. So on our side, the discussion, even if very, I would say early, are kind of we have the next version of Sushi happening very soon. Trident is going to be launching in 1 month, and this has been considered in the design on how we made it, making sure that we can easily spun out kind of these whitelisted pools if required and so on. So, I mean, we cannot ignore it. And at the end of the day, I think the more collaboration and the more openness there is, the better. So that's kind of our stance on everything related to institutional partners, regulation, etc.
Got it. Makes sense. I think there's something that I think is interesting, because I had an older family member call me and he said, "Hey, what is the best way for us to get exposure to crypto? Should I be buying Dogecoin? Should I be doing whatever?" I was like, I honestly was caught a little off guard, because I think a lot of these folks, they're hearing it through, the media and stuff like that, as opposed to me directly, because I'm so busy. What would you guys recommend to kind of your parents' generation? And I think what Ryan and Hunter are doing at Bitwise is really interesting, because it's offering some type of easier product for people who might not know how to use MetaMask, might not know how to, yield farm or anything like that, but do want kind of exposure to that upside. Tejas, what do you think? What would you tell your parents or relatives? How do they learn more and get involved?
I think with the older generation, these kind of products that are going to be popping up, like the Bitwise Index, is really a great way to get some new people that are unfamiliar with the crypto landscape. But I mean, there are continuously more and more traditional, or let's say non-crypto agencies, organizations that are giving information to their user base about different possibilities. And I think, the onus lies on them to do the research and figure out the best routes. I never don't like to speculate on price or anything like that, but certainly it is going to be a challenge with the baby boomers and that generation to figure out ways to kind of approach them and get them participating in DeFi as well.
Well, what are you telling your relatives and folks?
What do I tell my folks? I say, follow the news. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, just like most things in life. But for me, I really, since I joined Ren, I see a lot of advantage in investing in the protocols. I mean, they're going to be pivotal to building the DeFi future that we are envisioning.
Got it.
Yeah,
Will, how about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, most of my family and relatives are, I wouldn't consider them early stage technology investors. Like that's not really their career or their area of expertise. But I also see some of the largest opportunities to invest in transformative technologies that could potentially have like a global impact in the crypto space, in the DeFi space. And so I definitely see a need for a trustworthy, trustworthy firm such as Bitwise to come in to do the research, to curate this basket of assets and do the due diligence and offer, an index that provides broad exposure to the DeFi space as a whole, or different kind of, different verticals within the crypto space. And, hopefully simplifying that process for, a large demographic of investors that are, should absolutely not be creating a self-custodial wallet and piling into the things that they're reading about on the internet. It's definitely a minefield, and it's not for the faint of heart. So yeah, as far as what I'm telling my parents and my relatives, generally I say like, if you want to hold some Bitcoin maybe or something, use Coinbase. but with more of these options like Bitwise available through like brokerages and so forth, then I think like that's perhaps like the best path.
Maki, how about yourself? I'm actually very interested in what you said because you're very technical and deep and connected to so many protocols. What do you tell your parents or relatives when they say, "Hey, Maki, what should I invest?" Aside from Sushi, of course. What else should they be investing in?
I mean, that's a very good question. I think, regardless of what are your ideological thoughts on, whether Bitcoin, Ethereum, and so on, I think it would be very foolish to kind of discredit everything related to DeFi. It's been one of the most kind of explosive growth sector in the ecosystem we've seen in a very long time. The last year has been incredible, I think, for everyone involved, like all the participants, protocols, and so on. It's like the innovation happening here is just honestly mind-boggling. And like indexes like Bitwise basically like kind of concatenate everything that has been happening in a very easy product. Ultimately, like this is mostly for the US markets from what I've seen. It could be hard to kind of reach for people outside, but regardless, on my end, it's a matter of if someone is not technical enough yet to kind of grasp everything related to self-custody and kind of, the all nuances of cold wallet, etc. I do think, like these type of product that Bitwise have put in place are going to be more and more popular. And overall, that is kind of where I see some part of the, I guess, pie going to. So that's a good option, in my opinion. Especially the way like it's kind of rebalanced every month or so, I think. If there's like new entrants or something that is interesting, at least you're not just buying something that is going to stay static for the future.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And that is what we try to do a bit, right? Is just be representative of the market as a whole. And someone mentioned this earlier, just like not any, we try to offer that for a variety of sectors. So right now we have the large cap index, which is just all crypto assets. And then we have the DeFi index, which obviously is specifically DeFi. But there's really, an endless combination of assets or sectors you could really do in DeFi, which is part of what makes indexing the space so fascinating. But just on the flip side of that and talking to like, family members and whatnot, that's part of what we're trying to do is those who aren't savvy enough to maybe, create a MetaMask and transfer money from Coinbase over to that MetaMask and like yield farm, do that stuff, right? They can go through their normal vehicles, whether that's a financial advisor or if they're an accredited investor, they can, invest themselves. And we handle the custody, we don't personally, right? We outsource that to Anchorage and Coinbase custody and Fidelity, but like we try to take on the heavy lifting and provide, a simple kind of easy way to expose their clients to their assets. So it's super interesting to try to like compose these indexes and think of, what investors will be interested in and what the new paradigms are out there.
Yeah, Ryan, we had a question from the audience asking, where can they buy Bitwise products?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we have some trading on OTC markets. So BitQ, BitW is our Bitwise 10 crypto index that's trading on secondary market. So that's ticker BitW, and then we have BitQ, which is really interesting product. It's crypto equities exposure. So you talk about things like Coinbase and MicroStrategy and Riot mining. And then, for the DeFi index, which obviously this event is really more focused on, that's not yet trading on OTC markets, but you could, follow up with one of our business development specialists. We do have some requirements like being an accredited investor, just based on some regulatory requirements that we report under. But that's kind of how they could gain exposure to our clients. And you can buy or you can, gain exposure to BitQ through your, brokerage account in a lot of circumstances, which is really great.
Awesome. I'm curious because we have a blend of anon and non-anon members here. As the world of crypto expands and becomes more mainstream, I think a huge question, obviously, if KYC ML is going to be a problem, but also like in terms of gaining trust from the vast majority of the population, like how important is it to actually have a face and a name and identity to put behind a protocol, or is it still possible for anonymous founders to kind of create massive successes like SushiSwap, especially in this new world that we're entering into? Tejas, what do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's definitely possible to have both. We're continuously moving towards this progressive decentralization. And like I was saying, high yield will be the driving force for institutional adoption. These things that kind of give assurance to institutions and end users, things like KYC, AML, will follow as the ecosystem grows. And, that's where Ren is. We're going to be that base layer that creates that. The layers on top of it will provide this kind of assurance that institutions are used to. And that's the onus will lie on them to follow and comply with the regulatory landscape. But we're facilitating that initial movement, and that's what we think will be kind of the fuse that lights the powder keg.
Maki, what do you think? Are there going to be future Makis like yourself?
I think, yeah. I just don't think there's going to be going backs from there. I think more and more kind of credibly neutral anon can just pop up from left and right. At the end of the day, we're here because of Satoshi, so I don't see it as a blocker. At the end of the day, they have everything to earn. They need to earn this trust. They need to earn this confidence. They need to make sure that they are like good actors. And there's only one way to do so is by judging their actions. And to me, I think there's room for everyone. Like that is the simplest thing. You want to be anonymous, you want to be under your own name and so on. There's actually like nothing stopping you. So at the end of the day, it's based on your output, what your action are, etc.
Well, it all started with Bitcoin, and Bitcoin was created by Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever that may have been. So I think we have a pretty strong precedent that the identity of the founder of a protocol may actually be unnecessary or potentially even a detriment to the success of that protocol. I guess it really depends on I think it's hard to predict. I think both ways work just fine. I do think that we're heading towards a world where online identity is more and more detached from physical world identity. And I think that's generally a good thing.
So this past week, we were inundated with a lot of messages because obviously the big Poly network hack. I think something that's really interesting that I'm observing, I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on it, is that there's almost like a karmic force within the crypto community, right? Like when someone does something like that and commits a very negatively karmic act against millions of people, 600 million plus in dollars, the whole community, at least a large portion of the community, kind of bands together, right? I know personally we try to help out in terms of helping Poly Network guys get connected with Tether folk, USDC folks, see like which bridges we can help potentially contain what's going on, and ultimately, the guy did return a large portion of the funds. Maki, what do you think is like the future of like self-policing in a decentralized world where people might be anonymous, might not be anonymous, and generally there's a sense of like right and wrong, I think, in the community?
So I think, like in crypto and general, like DeFi, there's been like this massive kind of call to arms on DYOR, which is do your own research. I think someone that is potentially like just lured into by high yields could potentially like lose it all. It is like an actual real risk. I don't think should be taken lightly. What we've seen with Poly and, like the return of the funds is usually unheard of. We don't see this happening often. Of course, with such amount of money, the incentives are very high to find the day. So overall, I do think that, stepping into all these very high yield farms that contain risk is basically like you need to have expertise. Like that's kind of my take here. I wouldn't advise anyone to go off the chart that is something, outside of top 20 of DeFi polls, for example. For someone that is new, I think the TVL plays into it too. There's this Lindy effect where the longer the protocol is here, the more safe it is, etc. It shouldn't be undermined, and very often people are just chasing yields without thinking, and that result in hacks and exploits that are quite often, without any refunds. There's absolutely no one you can call, or the police couldn't do anything against, etc. Usually. So overall, yeah, I think leave it to the experts, and playing these games is very dangerous. I would advise him to stay into something like that is in the top 10, top 20 of DeFi polls, for example. And even them, they're not, I would say, protected of hacks or exploits. It can always happen. So yeah. DeFi is dangerous for a reason right now. And we hope that this can be more and more alleviated in the long term. So, anyone can basically deploy these funds. But until then, I think it's better to do a lot of research yourself before stepping into that.
I think the other thing that's really interesting here is, and I didn't hear this talked about too much this week, other than maybe from the Nexus Mutual founder, having a little advertisement about it. But we have decentralized insurance, and so I think as people become more comfortable with the DeFi space and with investing in DeFi, just becoming more comfortable with giving up a little bit of that yield to pay for insurance can go a long way. And as we have more of these types of hacks, I think that's just going to become more and more mainstream with things like Nexus Mutual and other decentralized insurance protocols.
Makes sense. Will, what do you think the future of accountability looks like in a space where there isn't necessarily a central governing body? How does that look like in terms of integrating with real, meat suit world regulators and political bodies? What do you foresee happening?
Well, I think we're heading towards a future where there's shared accountability, which is not something that regulators are familiar with or perhaps very comfortable with. I think regulators like to have a particular person or institution that they can point to and that they can hold accountable. But we're moving into a new world of decentralized networks and distributed communities that are forming around those networks. And these communities are responsible and accountable for the decisions that are made around these networks. And so I don't know how regulators are, necessarily apply the same kind of treatment to decentralized networks. So that, maybe they're like posting, and I can't imagine Gary Gensler like posting in a internet forum, saying like, hey, I'm concerned about your network for reasons XYZ. But I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. I imagine it plays out at the edges of networks. So like the access points, the on and off ramps, those are probably the areas that will be regulated and where accountability could potentially be enforced. I guess like you mentioned, Dean, that the Polygon team worked with USDT and USDC to, make them aware of the poly hack. And I think, those are very much like the on and off ramps of DeFi, and they do have the ability to step in and make sure that hackers, for example, are not able to move stolen funds through those assets.
Got it. Makes sense. Tejas, I have a more philosophical question for you. Obviously, as DeFi it's in the word DeFi, decentralized. Like there is an important democratic aspect to kind of what Ethereum stands for, and kind of what kind of decentralized finance in general stands for. Is there something that is still valuable though to economies of scale and centralization in certain aspects that you've observed that maybe perhaps having things too decentralized is too difficult to even, you know, move the ball forward or get things done. Where do you see the balance between that?
Good question. Good question. It's tricky to find that balance, and that's why we've kind of taken the approach of this progressive decentralization. You know, going too quickly can have some ill effects. Going too slowly can also. But we're right now on the brink of rolling out our gray core, which will be a big step towards decentralization. And that's a challenge, though, is to find that balance, especially in these early stages. And you know, I think the key to that, not only shared accountability, like Will was saying, but it's also really imperative for projects to work together, you know, to create best practices and to ensure that the funds of our users are safe while still staying aligned with our goals of decentralization, however they may be and how they vary from organization to organization. But that's the challenge right there, Dean, is finding that balance and you know, and letting our community have the voice that they deserve to have, which is something that's very important for us at Ren.
Got it. Makes sense. So 2 days ago, or a couple of days ago, last week, we announced, you know, the first ever $250 million M&A deal in crypto, token for token. Maki, what do you, as a, you know, a spearheading figure of such a large protocol with a large treasury, similar to kind of Polygon, what do you see as the future of potential acquisitions or mergers in the space, and how do you view kind of the currency that is in kind of the treasury as opposed to like a more traditional balance sheet of a company? Is it similar? Is it different? Or what makes it kind of more complex of a, you know, situation to be managing?
I mean, that's interesting. You know, like we saw the Polygon and Hermes one. There was also like, I remember the new and Keep network M&A. Before that, when we were talking about these, you know, with, for example, the Yearn mergers, that was more like partnership or, you know, like broadly speaking, collaboration from each other teams without necessarily like a token swap. Ultimately, you know, with all of the action and kind of money at stake in these various protocols, especially with kind of the endemic, you know, talent in the space, it's very hard to recruit, very hard to find new protocol developers, Solidity devs, and so on. More and more kind of protocols come down to basically like maybe acquiring another one is a sound solution. And, you know, this is kind of normal in the tech world and various kind of other places. So, and field domains, etc. I am not against it per se, but it's kind of, there's always kind of open-ended question. Like for the Hermes type of situation, I know there was like a set price per token that you could redeem. I think this is great. I think, you know, we're going to be seeing potentially like next after that, like how both these tokens can act in the governance system, potentially like without kind of buying one another. This is really going to kind of spun up, I guess, like new governance discussion and actions. Overall, like it's kind of exciting to see it unfold in the like under our eyes, you know, like in the kind of in the open, in the wild. And this is kind of a statement onto like how things are done in DeFi. You know, broadly speaking, we try to ourselves, you know, raise some capital from funds and VCs and so on, and the discussion was open to everyone. It didn't go through, but you know, that was a very good case study. And I think more and more of these problems are going to be solved in the open by these organizations. So it's exciting. And overall, myself, I think it is the way it should be. You know, like these kind of, all the participants should be involved. In the Hermes Polygon one, it was a little bit different. But, you know, ultimately, it's just, it is the way, in my opinion.
Got it. So you mentioned hiring. I'm not going to let you escape that. So there's a lot of really talented folks around the world, right? Maybe they were outside of crypto. They're finally learning about crypto because of the work that you panelists here have done. What is the best way for them to get hired at a protocol? What does that look like? And like what do you guys look for in hiring? And how is the decision made?
I mean, I think I can speak for every protocol here, it's all about passion. I think you want to have someone that is very passionate about contributing to your project, whether this is 0x, that is here, Rent Protocol, Sushi, can be Aave, Compound, Uniswap, Maker, like really like Yearn. There's like broad ecosystem that everyone can basically participate in. Most of them are, very simple, where you can just send your resume. Others are even more meritocracy based, where you can just join in and basically start working on something, showcasing your work, and basically like getting like hired swiftly after 1 month of trial. Like this is how it works for us at Sushi, and it's been remarkable. We've been able to build up like a 20-person team over the span of like the past 6 months, without any KRP pages or job posting and so on. So it's a statement on how kind of open the space is to join for outsider that wants to join. There's like a steep learning curve, but I do think anyone willing to start kind of working on the weekend can just start with Gitcoin. They can do like some small grants and small bounties and so on. I think it is one of the most underrated ecosystem tools that we have. So yeah, that's where I would like insist everyone to start, and that's where I started myself.
So for folks who don't know what Gitcoin is, do you mind explaining very, very briefly how it works and what it is?
Sure. Gitcoin is a place where basically like protocols, teams, individual can post bounties for developers or really anyone to solve. And then you apply for the work and you showcase your solution. If they have a budget, if everything is done, completed, and satisfaction on the one that posted the bounty, then the payout is done. And that's pretty much it. It's really simple. It is worth exploring. They've been, I think, one of the cornerstone of the Ethereum ecosystem in showcasing everyone working on various projects, etc. Like they've been mostly famous about the grant round, where people can ask for funding on their various projects contributing to the Ethereum ecosystem.
Got it. Tejas, what about you? What do you look for in hiring?
I'm a new hire myself, but I think, for a lot of protocols, they look for people that are self-starters, independent, to be willing to put yourself out there. And like Chef Maki was saying, that the learning curve is steep, but there's a lot of, one thing I've found coming to crypto is that the inclusivity is much higher, ironically, than a lot of other sectors, even ones that are putting a lot of emphasis on inclusiveness. I think crypto is a place where if you have a passion and drive, you can find a place. And the bounties on Gitcoin, they don't necessarily have to be like revising a smart contract. It could be helping write a white paper, let's say. And I come from a non-technical background. And so onboarding myself to that has been a challenge, but it's been something that I really feel rewarded with at the end of the day, because it's giving me more insight into it. But that's what it takes, is an individual with that drive and ability to put themselves out there. And for the most part, most of these protocols and organizations have telegrams that are open to anyone. And for a lot of people, besides our non-core tech team, they started with our community, being in our community and, showing their value, and then the team hire them that way. And I think that's the best step, is just being proactive and getting out there and putting yourself out.
Will, how important is it to know how to code in this day and age?
Critical, in my opinion, for everyone. I think everyone should learn some coding, and it should be taught in early school. But I'm assuming you're asking, like, is it necessary to be a programmer in order to enter the crypto space? And the answer to that is no. You don't need to be a programmer to enter the crypto space. There are tons of very promising growing companies in the crypto space that are just like any other company. They have lots of different functions that need to be filled, and it spans the spectrum of every other every role you'll find in any other company you need in a crypto company. So the short answer is you do not need to be a programmer to join the crypto space.
That being said, do you see the role of knowing to code becoming more and more important, or less, as higher level languages are invented and a lot of automation is occurred and nice UI is put in front of a lot of code. What do you think the future of that is?
Well, I think that the world is relying more and more on software systems, and more of the things that we rely on for modern civilization require software. So I think, yeah, so, learning how to code should be something that all of us are exposed to from a young age. Absolutely. As far as what are like the professional implications, like, are we heading towards a world where everyone's just going to be an engineer or like a software developer? No, definitely not. We're heading towards a world where we're empowering people to do more and more complicated tasks, and software is what allows those people to perhaps use their human intuition to solve problems in more complex ways. But I don't have a strong sense that every job is converging on a software engineer job.
We got a question. What machine language is preferable for the crypto industry? Will, you want to take that one?
I mean, it depends where you're working. Like, are you a blockchain developer? And if so, like, which blockchain? You might want to learn Rust or Go. If you're building applications that are going to like onboard the next 10 million people to these blockchain applications, then you probably want to know like TypeScript or JavaScript. And yeah, I mean, that's my sense is it really depends on like where you want to be focused.
Got it. Ryan, what do you guys look for at Bitwise? How do I get a job at Bitwise these days?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It's really interesting to hear about these different like qualities and characteristics that are looked for amongst protocols. It's pretty similar, I would say, at Bitwise. Depending on the type of role you're looking for, right? Obviously, if you're looking to be in our engineering team, like we would require some level of coding and technical background. But I would say first and foremost, it's really important to be passionate about crypto. Like, I mean, that may sound cliche, but as we all know, working in the space is really, it's kind of around the clock. But so one thing that we look for is to make sure that someone's authentically, truly passionate about crypto. They're interested in it. They are prepared to kind of, if they haven't already gone down the rabbit hole to where it's consuming most of their kind of time and energy, that they at least are excited about it. And that's really something that I don't think is easy to fake. I think you really only can prove that you have a true authentic interest in it if you've been in the discords, if you've been messing with the protocols and like either minting NFTs or yield farming or swapping, whatever you may be doing. And so I think we look for that at first and foremost, but also people who are open to learning about this, who are passionate about the change that's taking place, but are open to learning about how the world is going to kind of be in that new paradigm. So we don't have all the answers, definitely, as to what the financial landscape is going to look like once we do have a more integrated DeFi and traditional finance landscape. But we do know there's going to be a lot of really interesting things to learn along the way. And it's another, it's the shift to Web 3.0. So we're just looking for people who are passionate about that transition, but also want to help kind of build something, right? I mean, we are a startup. We've grown. We've more than doubled this year in size. So, it's not the smoothest, sailing that you might be used to in traditional finance, who have 10, 20, 30,000 employees at a company. But yeah, I think you got to be authentically interested in crypto before anything else.
Got it. Makes sense. I actually had a guy message me this question for Chef Maki. What is it like to be anonymous? How do you balance it with being in the real world and your personal life? Do you come out and tell them that you are a famous person in DeFi, or do you wait until you get to know them better? That's an interesting question.
Yeah, I'm not really interested in kind of, broadcasting to pretty much any normies or regular people what I'm working on. I just say broadly that I work in tech or finance, and that's pretty much it. Like, I think it is not relevant. I think, some people don't understand. I'm not, I'm anonymous because I don't do it for the fame. It's really just about kind of contributing to this space and having hopefully like a positive outcome for everyone. That's pretty much it. But by the way, I just wanted to have like a small kind of small thing I wanted to say here to everyone listening. Some of the most interesting experiment in DeFi, open finance, crypto, and so on takes time before like they kind of unfold. It's very funny that we have like Will here because back in the days, a few years ago, if people have been actually paying attention, we saw like crypto being used for advertising with kind of this banner on the subreddit that was purchasable with donut tokens. And these tokens were earned by contributing to this Reddit subreddit. And like this is maybe like a glimpse into what kind of the future of advertising will look like, in my opinion. And sometimes it takes time for this type of experiment to unfold. Just think about crypto kitties, like that was one of the most kind of, I would say, top signal in the past cycle. And now today we're seeing like a massive adoption of NFT, whether this is for speculation purposes or because people just literally like the art. I think it is really kind of groundbreaking and fascinating to see them accelerating to this speed. And once, all the ingredients are kind of at the same kind of brewing together at the same time, it can create like massive adoption and growth. And most of them are unexplored yet. And like 0x, like Will is very kind of humble, but I think has been one of the most
But the best way is to just join our Telegram group and start diving in. Our community is very active and willing to help anyone that has any questions.
Awesome. Mr. Will?
Yeah, you can learn more about 0x at 0x.org. Our community channels and Twitter are also listed there on the website. And if you are interested in doing some DEX swaps, you can check out our consumer product, Matcha, at matcha.xyz.
Awesome. Chef Maki?
Sushi.com for all your DeFi needs. You can hit me up on Twitter at 0xmaki. We have like a very, I would say, exciting Discord that you can join with many community members to speak with. And maybe a small round of applause for you, Dean, actually, for this panel. That was really great.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much. So Polygon.technology. We're always trying to look for talented folks. Ping me on LinkedIn, Dean Thomas.